Hello, everyone. Good evening and happy Ed Week. My name is Dr. Minerva Chavez. I am thrilled to be moderating this really cool panel of young P12 educators. I'm an associate professor in the Department of Secondary Education. And, I was trying to figure out how long I've been here. I've been here, I think this is my 11th year. So I've been here 11 years. I've taught many students going through the credential program and now seeing them full-fledged educators in high schools, mainly in middle schools and high schools. And I will share more a little bit further down about my own path to teaching. But for now, I want to ask each of our panelists to introduce themselves, to tell us a little bit about themselves, where they work, where they student taught, what grade they teach, subject areas, and for how long they've been teaching. I am going to invite Mark to be our first person to introduce himself. Mark.
Hi, everyone. I want to start by saying thank you so much for having me. I'm always excited to come back to Fullerton and share any experiences I have. Like I said, my name is Mark Bibian. I work at Eisenhower High School in the Rialto Unified School District. My subject that I teach is English 9 and a couple sections of ELD 1 and 2 for newcomers. I also coach. I'm a boys head coach for cross country, and I also am one of the assistant coaches for track and field. And I've been teaching for 4 years now. I'm in my 4th year of teaching. Oh, I did my student teaching at Santiago High School in Corona Norco Unified.
Thank you. Janelle, how about you? Tell us a little bit about your background in teaching, how you started.
Hi, it's been a while since I've been at Cal State Fullerton. I started teaching, I'm in my 9th year, and my student teaching was like an intern year for LAUSD, and I was there for 4.5 years, and I've been in Anaheim the last 5 years, and always in high school. I've taught. I have a mild, moderate, and a moderate severe. So I've done SDC science, biology, chemistry, and physics, and I've done moderate to severe disabilities in the school setting. And currently, I am working with an autism focus group. And that's in Magnolia High School in Anaheim.
And Mayra, will you tell us a little bit about your background, please?
Yeah. Hola, buenas tardes a todos. My name is Mayra Davalos, and I guess I'm here representing the elementary teachers. I am currently a 3rd grade teacher at Wilmore Elementary in Westminster Unified School District. This is my 1st year at this particular school. But I did teach for about 6 years in Saddleback Valley Unified, and I taught 2nd grade there. And I did my multiple subject credential at Cal State Fullerton along with my master's there, in addition to my Spanish accreditation, so I could teach in a dual language classroom. So I'm currently in a dual language school here at Westminster, and I also was in a dual language school in Saddleback. So it's really all I know. It's I love it. I love working with the English and Spanish and allowing our students to master these 2 languages in the classroom. And as for my student teaching, I did it both in English at the time. I think now there's a little bit more availability and more opportunities for students at Cal State Fullerton to do student teaching in dual classrooms. So I'm really happy for that progress that's happening. But I did do it in an English-only classroom in Santa Ana and Placentia, Yorba Linda.
Thank you, Mayra. And muchísimas gracias por hablarnos en nuestro idioma. We are, after all, presenting a panel on Latinx teachers in P12 education. And so thank you, Mayra, for being so representative. So I'm going to be talking about my background and how I got into teaching and why teaching, as you continue to write in our chat the purpose of you being here and what you're looking to get out of this experience. When I was thinking about how best to express my own journey into teaching, I thought about my graduate school experience where I learned about the works of Angela Valenzuela, who I think is still teaching at the University of Texas. I was struck by her notion of what it means to be educated, educación in Spanish. How many times have we heard our grandparents say, ese niño está muy mal educado, o qué mal educado estás? You know, but it's like, wait, does that mean he didn't study his spelling words and that's why we're saying it? So really, educación, according to Angela Valenzuela, isn't just limited or referring to a strict book knowledge, but that this is one where we provide instruction on how to be in the world. And so for me, the allure of education is that we are helping to form an entire student or an entire population of similarly aged students. So the emphasis is on respect and responsibility and being in society. And it's really a benchmark of how we will be judged while we are in schools and when we come out of it. You know, it's really the idea that you don't become a teacher because you're going to teach a subject or you're going to teach multiple subjects if you are in elementary school, but that you are teaching human beings. And I know that when I'm in my prerequisite courses, the courses students take before they get into the credential program, one of the things I tell my students is really, you're not teaching math, you're not teaching English, you're not teaching physical education, you are teaching human beings. And so what does that mean in relation to how you are developing your identity as an educator? And so for me, what does this mean? What does this mean in terms of thinking about becoming future teachers or why I became a teacher? One is that you have to be rooted in emotional intelligence. And this is what I've been seeing across the over 20 years that I've had in education, is that we weren't talking about emotionally intelligent educators. And yet now we do. We have to understand that we need to have effective social skills, self-awareness. We have to be effective decision makers. And sometimes on the fly, how many decisions do we make in one class period? We have to have empathy and we have to be able to self-regulate. If we do not have these skills, doesn't matter how much of an awesome mathematician you are or an artist teaching art, if you cannot connect with your students, if you cannot be emotionally intelligent in front of the classroom, you will not be a successful educator. The first time I taught, I was in my second year of my undergraduate, my college. I went to a small private liberal arts college in Amherst, Massachusetts called Hampshire College. There were 900 students total at the college. And at that time, it was the most expensive college. It was in early 90s. And it was like $60,000, $40,000 to $60,000 to go in for just 1 year. So they were very privileged, smart students there. And I was coming from LAUSD. I don't think I could string a paragraph together without there being tons of grammatical errors. And so I learned how to educate myself while I was an undergrad. So I value the role that teachers have. And when I realized how much of a disadvantage I had in my P12 experience, I became interested in making sure that other students weren't at that disadvantage. And that's how my story started. The second year in the summer, I didn't want to come back home because who wants to come back home for the summer, right? And live under your parents' roof again after you've been independent and living off campus for a whole year. So I applied for a grant with a couple of other roommates who were also Latinx students. And we got a grant to teach in an underserved city in Massachusetts called Holyoke, Massachusetts. And Holyoke, while it houses a very elite institution, higher ed institution, it is also home to Puerto Rican students who are underserved in their own schooling. And so we created a summer writing program, and we thought that just by advertising it, students would come. And when we showed up on the first day ready to teach our class, there weren't any students there. And we were like, well, how are we going to get our students? Where are we getting them from? And soon we realized that we had to go knocking on their doors or finding them on the basketball courts. And so we spent the first week generating interest in our courses, and we really had to go out with the kids and convince them to come to school during the summer, but to do some things fun. And so we did a kind of a literary course where they documented their own stories of being raised in Holyoke, Massachusetts, through art and writing and storytelling. And by the end of the summer, we had about 30 students who completed the program. And right in the middle of it, that was my aha moment, that I was loving the experience of being in front of the classroom, not to teach or now to profess as a professor, but to share space with students who are equally motivated to enrich themselves. But we have to understand how it is that it's done through their own experience. So two things I really love about teaching is, one, it's selfish. My first reason is selfish. It keeps me perpetually young at heart. And so I'm always surrounded by youth, even in the college atmosphere. And I'm always surrounded by people who are loving the experience of just being alive, of being new adults, of going on adventures and new learning opportunities. So that is invigorating, and I believe it keeps us young at heart. Our bodies tell a different story, but we're young at heart. And also the social space. I was thinking about something last night, and it came to me. It's like when we're inside the classroom, there's like this moment where you reflect that you, as the older person and the oldest one in that classroom, you are surrounded by the future. How many people can say that? By the future generations, which means that you have an amazingly powerful position, not what to think. And in this world where we are continuously conflicted by diversity, we have to understand that the range of diversity of perspectives, experiences, and people, we will need that diversity in order to solve the more and more complex social issues that are coming up in our time. And so if we're able to marry our own emotional intelligence with the responsibility to hold the power of those who are in the future in that particular space, then we can do really amazing and powerful and exciting opportunities to reframe what society will look like in the next generations. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to my panel to ask them, and I call this the holy shift movement. Yes, I said holy shift, as in shifting of perspectives. I call it the holy shift movement, that we know, like, oh my gosh, we want to teach. I want to teach. I want to be a teacher. So we'll start with you, Mark. What was your holy shift moment, your aha moment, I want to teach, that cemented your decision to become a P-12 educator? And will you share that story with us?
Yeah, absolutely. I know you said we have a 7-minute time limit, but just like yours, it was kind of a long story too. I didn't always want to be an educator, and the more I talk to people, the more I find that not most of us didn't plan on becoming educators. I think it's a blessing if you did know that you wanted to become an educator, but that wasn't the story for me. I actually, I remember my senior year of high school, I was like, I will never become a teacher. So I actually started my undergraduate towards political science. I actually had dreams of becoming a lawyer someday. I took a few courses and it was terrible. I hated it. I didn't like the material. It wasn't engaging. It didn't reflect on my identity and my personality. And while I was trying to figure out what I did want to do, I was also going through a difficult time in my life where, unfortunately, my family was in the middle of losing our house. So we were going through that, and we did end up losing our house. My mom had to end up moving to LA, but I was working in Riverside and going to school in Fullerton. So there was no way that I was going to live in Los Angeles. So I had to get a second job in order to move in by myself and support myself. At the time, I was going to school full time, and I was working as a server at Applebee's. I was waiting on tables. When luckily my friend was like, "Hey, if you need another job, my mom can actually hire you as an avid tutor for one of the middle schools." And I was desperate for a job, so I took the job. Once I did become an avid tutor, it felt like the environment was just for me. And just like Dr. Chavez was saying, the amount of influence we have over those students was amazing. Having easily motivating them to want to go to college and do better for themselves, I was like, whoa, this is where I need to be. I need to show these students that they can be better. And it was ironic too, because I wanted to get away from where I grew up. I wanted to get out of there. I wanted to, I purposely tried hard in high school so that I can get away from the Inland Empire. And I was back in the Inland Empire being an avid tutor. But it was there that was pretty much my aha moment, seeing that I have a huge influence on these kids, and I can help them believe in themselves. And that's what I did. My minor was actually English at the time, and I was like, wow, well, I really enjoy English. My English skills were the only thing that were keeping my grades up in college, and I really like being in the classroom, even if it was just something as small as being an avid tutor. I realized that I did have that influence over them, and just like Dr. Chavez said, I was like, "Whoa, this is the future. What am I going to do with it? If I do have this influence over these children, I should do something with that." So I changed my minor to my major. I left the political science major, and then that's when I started going into what I can do. So once I decided I wanted to become a teacher and change my major, I got involved in all of these clubs of the Men of Color in education. I applied for a job at the Center for Careers in Teaching, and the rest is pretty much history for me.
Thank you, Mark. Janelle, will you tell us about your holy shift moment, your aha moment?
Well, I might be the weird one, but I've always wanted to go into teaching. I was definitely a little kid that would play school with my cousins, while my grandma was babysitting us, and there was a bunch of us, and they always loved me for it because there's so many cousins together. I would wrangle them in, and we would do fun activities together. And I just had a knack for it when I was young. And when I was in 6th grade, my youngest, or I guess the next one after me, he was in kindergarten. There's a kind of a big age gap, and he was in school. And my mom was required to do those like volunteer hours. She couldn't do that as she was working full time. So I asked if I could do it. From 6th grade all the way through high school and in college, I was always finding a way to be in a classroom of a teacher that I knew to help them out. And I think I always wanted to be an elementary school teacher. I always wanted to do like kindergarten or 1st grade. And I loved the little ones, and I thought they were so cute. And I had a teacher in 1st grade, I'll never forget her. And she was like, "I love 1st grade so much. We get all these cool toys and we have all these colors, and 1st grade's best." And I was like, yeah, it's the best. I want to be a 1st grade teacher. And when I was in high school, the teacher that I had already for several years, several summers,
Janelle, I think we're having some tech issues on your end.
It's kind of hard right now to get a job as a kindergarten teacher with little ones. So have you ever thought about connecting me with a teacher and I started working with her primarily? And
we can hear you better now. Yeah, we can hear you better.
Yeah. Okay. I need to rewind, or just keep going? Okay.
Keep going, Janelle.
Okay. So He connected me with like a speech therapist and occupational and physical therapy, and I kind of learned a lot more about those things. And that was kind of my maybe a harder time. Acts very unique and special population.
Heather, can you confirm that Janelle's, it may just be on my end, but can somebody in the chat just say yes, Janelle's audio breaks up?
Yeah, it is Janelle's. I just texted her. Oh, she went. Oh, there she is. I told her. Yeah, there we go. I suggested she turn her camera off so that her broadband would be less pulling.
Okay.
That's why I'm off camera as well. Sorry.
Okay. Janelle, were you done with your chat? I think I heard maybe half of it, but we can continue. We can move on. We can get to.
Continue. It's okay. Yeah.
Okay, your audio seems to be doing a little bit better. So thank you for that. Maida, can you share with us your aha moment, please?
Yes. And before I start, I just want to say I feel inspired by all of you. It's really just fun to be listening to some of your stories and kind of be recharged and like, oh yeah, like all of this is so true. And sometimes when we're in it, it's like, we're so stressed and there's so much work to do. We kind of forget like these really important moments that define where we are and why we are here. So thank you for sharing. I feel like it's a nice refresher. But to start off with a little bit about my story and where I started and my moment. So unlike Janelle, I didn't always want to be a teacher. I always had really great teachers though growing up. So I feel like I always had them as an example of what a great teacher looked like. And so I did my bachelor's, my undergrad in communications and sociology. I worked in media for a long time, and it was very unfulfilling for me, to say the least. So I did that for many years, and I started volunteering at my elementary school where I went to school because I was still living at home and it was really like walking distance. So I thought, I have this extra time, let me volunteer. And it was then during that experience where I felt or saw this need for teachers that really, not saying that these teachers didn't care, but there was a need for teachers that had a little bit more empathy and had more connection with the students in the community that they were serving. And so it was then that I realized I think I could do this, and I think I could do better. And I wasn't necessarily trying to go into dual language right at first, but I did go to a dual language school growing up, and it was one of those where they called it an early exit program where they would teach you Spanish, but it was really only for the sole purpose to make you proficient in English. So it really wasn't this idea of, hey, let's make you bilingual and biliterate. It was, hey, let me teach you this language so you can learn better English. And it was then, like, I think third grade where they exit you out and it's suddenly English only, figure it out. So you kind of get thrown into this new language and it transition. And so that always, I was really grateful I got to learn Spanish at school in a school setting, not really understanding then what the sole purpose of that program was. But looking back now, I'm grateful that I had at least that, because I know future generations didn't necessarily get that due to different laws that passed here in California. And so knowing that these schools still existed while I was in grad school and getting my multiple subjects, I thought, wow, like this is so great. I'm able to go back and potentially work in one of these dual language schools. And of course, I know one of you mentioned, oh, I'm trying to improve my Spanish and become more fluent. Totally understand. And I get it, because sometimes we feel so insecure or uncomfortable with our level of Spanish. And maybe you didn't have, schooling in Spanish and all you had was high school, all you had was home language. I want to encourage you that it is enough. And if you really try and you try to go to practice it and you take classes and you really, si te empeñas, if you really just try and put your effort into that, I think that it's very possible. And I encourage you to not give up, even if you are doing single subject, simply because a lot of these students that are in elementary school now do end up going to these junior highs and high schools where they do offer these dual classes. So think about it that way. There is room for you in the single subject areas, especially with our dual students that are transitioning over to these schools really soon. Many of them are starting off, many programs are new, but it's really exciting to see the growth of these dual language programs all around us. So, yeah.
And Maida, thank you for bringing in the concept of the culturally relevant. You talked about the language and the culture, and then looking around to see how many others look like us. I saw a question in the chat that is related to the inspiration. Like I asked about the holy shift, the moment, the aha moment for you where you decided that you wanted to teach. But there's also, and I believe that all of us, all students, have an equally engaging story of, was there a person at the school site? It may or may not be an actual teacher. It could be the janitor, could be the staff member in the counseling office who inspired you, who inspires you, and who you recall now that you're in the classroom. Can we, and then let's see, were they other Latinx, or were they not? And is it necessary for them to look like us in order for us to be inspired to continue in education? Mark, will you kick us off, please?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so glad that Maida did mention that, because it actually reminded me. I was, as I mentioned previously, I was kind of unsure of what I wanted to do. And it actually was someone who was in the AVID program. His name was Mr. Sorrentino. And he pulled me aside one day and he told me there's a high need not only for Latino teachers, but Latino men. And that was actually the deciding factor that pushed me. So I don't know if it necessarily has to be somebody who looks like us, but for me, he was a Latino, and he told me there's a high need, and he's absolutely right. There's still a high need for people who look like us. People don't think that they can until they have examples in front of them, and that was really what did it for me, actually. And it wasn't until Maida said that it reminded me that he was the one who pretty much inspired me. I also wanted to add on to something Maida said. If you're looking into getting your bilingual authorization, I'm single subject and I do have my bilingual authorization. Not only if you want to participate in a dual language program, but my school site, for an example, we have over 500 English learner students, and that authorization comes in handy no matter what subject you're in. But yeah, I just wanted to throw that in there.
Thank you, Mark. Janelle, let's try again with you. Same question, someone who inspired you or who continues to inspire you.
Okay, I'll keep my camera off and hopefully my audio works. If it doesn't, somebody just wave in the screen and I'll see it. But, you know what? A firmware in high school, and he was an Indigenous man. He was very, very helpful in guiding me. I was a part of the AVID program at that point as well. And my AVID teacher was a person of color as well. So she was very, very encouraging. And it was good to have those people on my side. But I will say at the school, there was only, less than 5 teachers that were people of color. Everybody else was strictly Caucasian. And it was really amazing to me because I'm going to say 60 something percent of our population was Latinos, and the other 30% was other people of color. And there was only like a small 10% population of Caucasian students. So I think that I heard more from the students that I work with now that say they would like to see more teachers of color, encouraging them, so that they can be the example that the kids need to see. Talk about your journey with them and tell them like, hey, we're all in this together. We're going to encourage each other, and just to always be all inclusive. I think that that's really important. So to all of you guys out there that are looking into the teaching profession, yes, you are needed. And the students, they crave that. They crave to see people that look like them in those roles of responsibility and leadership.
How about you, Maida? Your story.
Back and I think about my elementary school teachers, and although they did not necessarily look like me, I will speak to this fact that they don't necessarily need to look like us every single around us to inspire us. I think what really matters is that they are willing to learn about you, about your culture, about your language, to value that and see you really as an asset versus, oh, you're an English learner, right? So having teachers that value everything about you. I think I had that in second or third grade, I want to say, where our teacher really tried to learn about our culture, and she tried to learn our, Spanish, and she was really, she did it in a way where it was fun and playful, and we would have like readers theater, and it wasn't something where she wasn't authentic about it. Like, it was a very authentic way of learning about us and who her students were. So I think as long as they are willing to learn and understand and appreciate and see us as an asset and value us, that really matters to me also. But at the same time, I do understand the importance of representation and students seeing people like them. For example, when it comes to like literature, when I'm reading a story, students love seeing characters and stories that look like them. It's the same kind of concept, seeing them around school, seeing them in these roles of, ooh, I can do that. Like, giving them that motivation, inspiration also is really helpful. So it wasn't until maybe junior high school that I started to see more teachers of color, where I thought, oh, like, if Mr. Munoz or Miss Rubio, if they could do that, maybe I could do that too. But again, it wasn't something that was an instant connection at that time. I think looking back in retrospect, yes, I appreciate having that representation around.
And now let's shift over to when you started to think about a credential program, or knowing that when you want to teach, you need to go through a credential program so that you have a license to teach in the state of California. So for each of the panelists, how did you decide where to obtain your teaching credential? And what was the thinking process like for you? What actions did you take to prepare for it? And then finally, how did you decide that Cal State Fullerton's College of Education was for you for your credential? Mark, we'll start with you.
Yeah, Fullerton is very demanding, I will say that. And especially when it comes to student teaching, when it came time to deciding like where I was gonna go, that was a big factor for me, only because I wasn't in a position that I would not be able to work during the program. So I was very conflicted on which program I would go to that would allow me to work and be able to support myself financially. So I did debate other schools that would allow me to have shorter student teaching, because that happens a lot with private schools. But ultimately, this is the career that I chose and that I would do for the rest of my life. And I thought that Fullerton would be the program that would prepare me the most. Even though it's a year long of student teaching, I don't regret it, because I went into my career fully prepared. Whereas some of my colleagues, unfortunately, they did go through those accelerated programs or those student teachings that were only about 16 weeks. And in the long run, it didn't benefit them. They're put on assistance plans, whereas I wasn't. So I like to think Fullerton prepared me for that. Also, as I mentioned, I was working at the College of Education under the Center for Careers in Teaching during my undergrad, and just the The faculty was amazing. They're welcoming, they're helpful. As a student assistant, they treated me so well there. And then also that my subject area, which was English, I knew a lot of the faculty there. I felt like they were really knowledgeable. And I just felt like that was where I needed to be. So that was ultimately what I did to decide to go into Fullerton. As far as preparing, I just had to mentally prepare that I would have to be very busy for a whole year. I think I was still working two jobs. I was still serving, and I was still no, I was only on one job. So I was still serving and then student teaching and then going to school. So I just had to mentally prepare for the demands of that, what came with TPAs, student teaching, lesson planning, and yeah, there's not much else you can do that I can remember, just mentally preparing and being ready for that.
Yeah, Mark, and I'm glad you mentioned it. It is for the secondary education, it's a 36-week student teaching program. And while you might say, well, I can go to another university and do it in half the time, but remember, our contacts with the districts in the area are super tight. And I have been privy to superintendents who have said to us, if we see candidates from programs who had less than 36 weeks of student teaching, their resumes will go to the end of the pile, and they'll bring up the ones from programs that had lengthier experiences, like this 36-week program. So oftentimes they'll say, we put the CSUF students right up front. This comes straight from superintendents and principals who know what they're looking for. So you might think, I need some shortcuts. I do need to work. And absolutely, I think at this point, all of us need to work to be able to make ends meet. But are you willing to engage in a short-term sacrifice, a 36-week sacrifice for longer term gains, which means for you, what's the longer gain? That you get to pick the school you want because you'll know you'll be up at the head of the line because you put in those 36 weeks and that sacrifice. Janelle, how about you? How did you come to decide on your credential program and specifically at CSUF?
Okay, so my stepmom actually has been a teacher for 20 years now, maybe more, and she got her credential at Cal State Fullerton. And I was in elementary school at the time, and she would actually take me to campus when she had classes, and I would hang out in the library. So I was going to Cal State Fullerton when I was really, really little. And I just was like, oh my gosh, this is the only place that I can go. And the best teacher I know came here and got her credentials here. And she continues to be just super successful with it. She's gotten Teacher of the Year awards several times for her district. And every other teacher that I know that has come out of Cal State Fullerton is just crushing it. And I know several teachers who got their credentials elsewhere, and it's not the same. It's definitely not the same. New teachers, the experience is different. The support system that Cal State Fullerton offers, how accessible the professors are when you need help and support. From my experience, nothing else would compare. So for me, Cal State Fullerton was just the only choice, and I got really lucky that it was an awesome choice. So thanks to Fullerton.
I gotta say, I like talking. I like listening to these type of stories because once you get out into the field, it's really difficult for you to come back and to tell us, like, really, how are we doing as faculty members, preparing you for the experiences that you're having in the classroom. So it's nice to hear you say that, Janelle. Thank you. Maida, how about you? What was your process like thinking about your credentials, and specifically at Cal State Fullerton?
Well, I did my undergrad at Cal State Fullerton, and I loved Cal State Fullerton. I loved the support. I loved how close it was to home. I think that was a big factor. And although when it did come to the credential program and the master's, I really wanted something. I really wanted a place that would prepare me and that would give me an opportunity to explore different districts in my area that I would potentially want to work at. And I really like that it had the option to apply and attend Cal State Fullerton. At first, I wasn't really sure what program I wanted to go into, but just having somebody, I think it was Heather, who I talked to a long time ago, and she was able to help me identify what program would be best for me and when to apply. And I don't know if this happens to anybody else, but like this self-doubt of, ooh, am I going to be able to do this? Am I even good enough? Is this something that I really want to get myself into? So it was all these like self-doubt questions and things that came up for me during that time. But it was really reassuring to talk to somebody who it works at the school and talks to potential candidates and who can see a potential in you and understand that, yeah, it's really scary to try something that is really demanding of your time, of your energy, of your mental strength, a lot of things. But at the same time, really having that support and guidance really helped make that decision for me. And action, so just reaching out to the people that are available to you, finding the resources in the programs that you want to potentially attend. You can explore it. You don't have to decide then and there, but it's important to look at your options and see what fits best for you and your needs and your wishes and your dreams. So, and then also another thing to mention is that there is also a lot of support when it comes to scholarships and grants. You just have to reach out. You know, a lot of the time we struggle to think about, oh, this is going to cost so much money, but there is support when you look for it. So you really have to just be a little proactive about looking for these resources in order to get what you want in these situations. But it really is comforting to know that there's people at the school, at the university, that really want you to succeed and are there to support you.
Mina, your comment on self-doubt, I think there isn't any one of us on the screen who isn't plagued by self-doubt from time to time. I think if I've learned something, especially around these last years where I've really been working on this issue for my own self, I mean, I will say it probably will never go away. So how to handle it when it comes up, it's engaging in your emotional intelligence and your skills. Like if there is an issue of self-doubt that comes up for you, you sort of sit with it. You sit with it and you say, this is coming up for me. Is this something because it's new? What is it? What is it poking in me that's making me feel insecure about it and bringing up these issues like an imposter syndrome? And then where are my resources and how to mobilize those resources so that you're able to overcome that self-doubt. So that when you enter into that realm of self-doubt, it's mainly because we're in new territory and it's an opportunity to expand your learning. So it's actually a good thing that we have these moments with us. Mark, I hear you shaking your head. You want to add to that?
No, I totally agree with what both Maida and what Janelle are saying. I love the program. And if I didn't, I wouldn't be back here for my master's program as well. So it's just a culture that Fullerton has. But I do want to say that Maida is absolutely right. Sometimes we do have to go looking for those resources, but they're there. You just have to reach out to the right people as well. And if I know that as far as like Amy and Heather, if they don't know, they'll direct you to the people who do know.
And at this point, before I move on, Mayra, Janelle, are there any other comments that, now that you've been sitting here for the past half hour talking about this, that you wanted to add or you wanted to contribute or comment or question so far? Take a moment just to pause and see if there's anything you wanted to add.
I just wanted to quickly add, I don't know about many of you, but for me, I was a first generation college student. And so that is a challenge and hurdle in and of itself. And so if that is something that maybe you can relate to and you don't know necessarily how to navigate these waters, it's okay. And like I mentioned, there is support for you available at the school, and you can even reach out to me or to, I'm sure, any of the panelists. I can share my email on the chat. So if you do have questions about dual language, elementary, if you want to come observe because you really just want to see what it's about and if it even interests you, I would just love to invite you to explore it and just be in it for a couple of hours and see if that's something that even interests you before you really dive deep into this. But I just want to encourage you to reach out. And if it's not elementary that you want to observe, I'm sure you can reach out to some of the high school teachers, or I can see if I can get you in touch with somebody else where you could go and just take a look and see if that's something that you are really interested in.
Maida, hearing you speak about that, it made me think how important it is for our audience, for those who have decided to join us today, as you're looking to bring depth to your network of teachers or future teachers. You find maybe perhaps an affinity to any particular panelist or any of the faculty or the staff members like Heather or Amy who are joining us today. If you find that you do have sort of that connection or something they said that you wanted to follow up on or follow up with, feel free to always connect. Our emails are public. You can Google any of us through the intranet system for CSUF and identify us and reach out and continue or build potential opportunities for mentorship even, especially as you're going through this early road to for your future career. So make sure you keep that in mind. There are reasons why you have chosen to attend this session on a Thursday evening. And so kudos to you. Start building those practices and building your network of people. Janelle, was there something you wanted to add before we continued, or are you good?
Yes, I was actually just going to second what Myra said. I too, I'm first in my mom started school before she came into our family, but I am first in my family as well. And just like Mark, I worked multiple jobs while going through my undergrad. And, it is difficult. The first years are difficult, but after that, it gets easier. Things get, you really start to get into your swing of things. And just like Myra, I'm in high school, but I do work with special ed with a very special population. So it's like teaching third grade, but they're in high school bodies. And if there's a big need for that as well. And especially with people of color, because the parents, they need somebody to talk to. They need somebody who can explain things to them. And I will put my email down as well if you would like to reach out to me. I am here for you guys.
Thank you. I put down also my email. I know Myra, you did too. Thank you for that. So the next question that I wanted to ask our panelists, I want you to consider 3 highlights of teaching in P12. What are those highlights? 3 things that you enjoy about your career. And then, of course, the next question, we'll talk about some of those challenges, because nothing is perfect. So let's talk about the highlights first, things you want to underscore for us. Mark.
So many things. The first, I want to say the highlight for me is being able to inspire young Latino men to go for whatever they want to do. I'm always going to advocate for college, no matter what. Education for me is the outlet to whatever you want to do. But that's not always the way, and it's not always for everyone. I too am first generation. I don't know. I still to this day don't know anyone in my family who's gone to college, and yet they've been successful. So a highlight for me is to inspire young men. If they want to go to education, absolutely, and I'm going to do what I can to help them get there. But if they don't, then I want to inspire them to look for ways for them to be successful and never settle for less. I think I'm in a really good position where I'm able to do that. So that's one of the biggest highlights that I can do. I'm able to give these young Latino men something that I didn't have growing up. Most of my teachers were white and female, and although they were amazing, and I still keep in touch with many of them, it wasn't them who inspired me to become a teacher. It took that one male teacher to push me to do that. And I feel like I'm already getting, students tell me like, I'm finally thinking about college because of you. And on the flip side, I'm getting people who are like, no one's ever told me I can be successful. So that's just something that I really am able to highlight every single day when I go into my job. The second thing I'd like to highlight is just being able to be empathetic with students. Again, a lot of the ways that I go into teaching, a lot of the reasons that I went into teaching are just to be the teacher that I didn't have. I remember a lot of my teachers talked to me like I wasn't a fully functioning human being. So something that I want to highlight is that I do talk to my students like they're human beings. I talk to my students the same way I'm speaking to all of you today. And a lot of that is because I remember being in high school being like, I can comprehend what you're saying. Please speak to me as a human being, as an individual. And I do that. I value and the rapport I build with my students. That's something that I pride myself in. And that rapport is what gets them inspired. Wow, my teacher believes in me. And then the third highlight I would say is just being able to go into something that I genuinely enjoy doing. Like I said, nobody in my family went to college. Many of them are in construction or working hard labor jobs to support themselves, and I admire them wholeheartedly, but I'm not built that way. That's not for me. So I'm very grateful that I get to be in an environment where I'm having conversations with students and I'm not breaking my back day after day, the same way that my parents are still doing to this day. So that's something that I guess I want to highlight as well.
Oof, it reminded me, you talked about the sense of being invisibilized while we're being schooled because of who we are or where we come from or the languages that we speak. I was in high school at the tipping point of white flight. So there was a huge exodus of the there was a demographic shift in the city where we came to live. Also first gen, many of the teachers would speak ill in front of us with other teachers as if we weren't there, as if we couldn't hear. And it was very unappealing, and it lowered our morale. And a lot of students decided to rebel against it, but towards their own detriment, not towards like, oh, wait, you think that about me? Watch me, watch what I can do, watch how far I can go. So hopefully we get more and more teachers who can see students regardless of the color of the skin of the teacher, that they can see and value the diversity of the students that are in those classrooms. Janelle, how about you, your 3 highlights?
All right, 3 highlights in teaching. I'm going to say I really love doing restorative justice with my students. We do a lot of community building, and I know that they really, really benefit from that, from just being able to talk to each other about their home lives and being able to share that with others, and realizing that so many of their peers feel the same way they do. So I think that having those RJ circles is definitely like a really big thing that I love to do, and I do it weekly with my class. Another thing that I really like is working with behaviors. I've learned that, it's not just a special ed thing, it's an everybody thing. I'm constantly covering for other teachers in a gen ed classroom, and they're always like, oh, Miss O, you're so cool. Like, you get us. And it's not just just because I look like them or I understand, what they're saying when they're code switching. It's that I really do get them, and I make them feel like what they say matters. And I think that's really important. Just like Mark, I did coaching for a while. I was a cheer coach, and I really found I had a lot more, I guess, power in that role than I originally thought, because here I am, a Latina woman of color with this group of 30 girls who are also of color. And, they really care about what they look like and what people are saying, and having another female to kind of talk about those things with them and troubleshoot it really inspired me. And I'm working with another teacher right now to try to start a Girls Inc. on our campus, so that we can have a place for them to express their feelings and work through things, because a lot of times when we're not communicating the right way and we're feeling frustrated, it's because we don't know how to say what we're feeling, or we don't know how to ask for those certain things, and we get frustrated. So I really feel that a lot of my highlights in being a teacher don't really come from the curriculum content, but they come from a lot of the outside factors.
Great point, Janelle. Can you explain for those in the audience who don't know what restorative justice is and what that is trying to counter in terms of discipline, when we talk about how to discipline children in for instance, in high schools where you are? What is restorative justice? Why does it appeal to you, and how do you use it in your classroom that makes it a highlight for you?
So I know a lot of language arts teachers that use it in their classroom, and they'll maybe call it like a Socratic seminar, and they'll have a topic, and kids are talking about it and discussing it. But in my classroom, I do use it, and it works as a behavior modification. It helps students build empathy. So what we do is we sit in a circle, or we move our chairs around in a circle, and we have a topic that has nothing to do with the curriculum, but it'll start off with, hey, tell me about your weekend. And the whole purpose of restorative justice for me in my class is to help the students build empathy and understand that, hey, Johnny doesn't want to talk today to anybody, but we also know that, maybe this weekend Johnny's dog passed away. And I feel that with behavior in the high school setting, once these kids talk to each other and they understand where that other person is coming from, they just develop this big understanding, and they're like, hey, you know what? I'm not that mad at you anymore. I understand why you texted my boyfriend, because you needed somebody to talk to, or whatever the high school is that day. There's a million of them. But I really feel that, whether you're going into elementary school, middle school, or high school, it's something, that you definitely want to look into. You can YouTube it, and there's so many videos about how to do it, and people that do it so well. And it's crazy when you just give them the opportunity to express themselves and make sure that they know that it's a space that's safe, that what's said in that circle stays in that circle, and building that trust with one another. It just really changes the dynamics of a setting. It really does. We have behavior kids that run off or throw things, and once other kids understand, they kind of approach them and they're like, hey man, you seem like you're upset, why don't you take a break? And it's really amazing when they do that for each other. And for me, that's really what restorative justice is about.
And Janelle, you were talking, I did pull the book out that I use in my own classrooms. It's called Not Light, But Fire. Matthew K., How to Lead Meaningful Race Conversations in the Classroom. But I would say it's not just limited to meaningful race conversations, but it actually it's a setup of how to establish normal practices for what you are calling restorative justice as a natural tendency in your classroom. It's written as a story, as a novel, and Matthew K., as a high school teacher, perfectly outlines the scripts of how these conversations take place. Fascinating reading, and I would recommend it to anyone here, and especially those who are already practicing educators. Matthew K., Not Light, But Fire. How about you, Maida? What are your three highlights? And thanks, Janelle.
Yeah, and even those restorative circles that you were talking about, Janelle, they work really well in elementary school, even just giving students a voice and giving them the importance that they deserve is essential. And I think it's just great to see it that it's used all throughout. And the more teachers learn about it, the more teachers practice it. It really does make a difference in your classroom culture and the relationships that you get to build with your students and that they get to build with each other. But yeah, awesome stuff. And so three highlights, three things. It was really hard to think about, but I love seeing my students just grow and move on through the grades. And for example, I have students now that are in 8th grade that I had when they were in 2nd grade. And so, yeah, it makes me feel really old. But at the same time, it's just so fabulous to know that I was a part of their educational journey, and that they are using, I'm hoping they're using some of those things and skills that we learned in class in their future. And I keep in touch with a lot of their parents. A lot of it is relationships with these families also. So allowing yourself to be vulnerable and allowing yourself to be open and available to not just your students, but their families, because a lot of times you'll learn about a lot about your students by just talking to their families and having a better understanding of what their home life is like. So that's been really rewarding, just seeing them grow up and continue to use those to be biliterate, continue to their education in their bilingual program, and finding importance in being bilingual. And when they're little, sometimes they don't understand necessarily, why are my parents making me come to this bilingual school? But the older they get, a lot of them start to value it a little bit more. Another thing is just building those relationships. So it kind of goes all hand in hand, building those relationships and staying in touch with them throughout their educational career, and fostering that love for language and for learning. So I think that's what I have.
Thank you, Maida. So because many of you are hopefully considering the actual credential program at Cal State Fullerton, let me have the panelists come back to their experience as credential students in the program, whether taking the prereqs or once you're actually in the program. Though in my mind, you're already in the program if you're taking the prereqs. You're already one of ours. And so what have been the challenges? And you can be as candid as possible when we get critical feedback, especially around our program or what we are doing that is challenging for our students or gatekeeping them, or we're not being mindful enough of what you're all going through. I like to hear them, because then we bring them back into our own meetings and discuss, like, how do we remove the obstacles that our students are facing in our classes or in our credential program. So what have been some of those challenges that you faced in the credential program, and how did you overcome them if you were able to? Mark, we'll start with you.
Yeah, it was just hard. It was, like I said before, it was a hard program. It was very demanding, but overcoming the demands of the program were faculty that did actually understand that it was a demanding program. So they were very lenient and they would work with you whenever you needed to. The professors, it was like a new year where they changed the TPAs. So we were all a little lost and we were all kind of figuring it out together. So that was challenging in of itself, that I guess they had changed the way the TPAs were and the cycles. So everyone was scared. And even the professors were like, oh man, I hope we do it right, because this is so different than the way it was. And it was the first year they were doing it. And I guess we just overcame that by trusting each other, trusting our professors, and sitting down, reading the rubrics of what it meant to pass the TPAs, and then getting feedback from each other, being vulnerable, being like, this is what I'm doing. Is this good? A lot of the times it was like a day by day thing, lesson planning, working, going to class. And I just try to overcome it by remembering to take some time for myself whenever possible. Um, Having a master teacher for a whole year can be tough. I didn't always want to be there. You're a guest essentially in somebody's classroom for an entire year. And for that, that was challenging in of itself. I love my master teacher though. She 1000% prepared me for my job. And even though sometimes we're like, I don't want to come or I don't want to be here. I just had to take a step back and remember that I am a guest in their classroom and they were, you know, nice enough to allow me to be a guest in their classroom for an entire year. So I did finish the year and we had a great relationship. But it was hard. It was difficult being there for free, of course. So that's tough. But I just had to remind myself that it was going to be worth it at the end of the day. And it is. It's 100% worth it. um Having your own classroom and decorating your own the way that you want to and teaching the way that you want to. There are going to be times when your master teacher does things that you don't necessarily agree with, but instead of voicing those concerns, just make a mental note of what you would do differently in your let's go, let's do it. It wasn't always like that. So just when you're in the program, like Dr. Chavez said, you're pretty much in the program. So when you're in the program, just remember to take a step back and that you'll get through it. It's long, it's a year, it's hard, but it's the program that's going to prepare you to be the best in your field.
I appreciate you saying that anytime there are changes in the state mandates, we all pull together and we're equally frightened, but we make sure that our students are not sacrificed during those shifts. That's when we most consider our most vulnerable, especially our most vulnerable students who might fall through the cracks. That's when we keep them closer. And that's an advantage of being in what is relatively a small credential program, because we are able to keep eyes on you, not just one professor, but all of us pulling together and making sure you're on our radars. Thank you for saying that and for mentioning it. How about you, Janelle?
I'm going to second that the program is very demanding. Being a teacher and going through it is, it's tough when you're figuring it out, because I'm somebody who really wants to know the answers, and I want to know, like, okay, when is this going to be over? And when can I try this for reals? And when this and when that? And like just the waiting process would make me like a little anxious. But I think that having a demanding program is a part of the experience, because when I even think about doing my prerequisites, being an undergrad, working multiple jobs, going to school full time, having to commute so far from home and work, with little sleep, but getting it done, because I knew what my end goal was. I think that really prepared me for life today. Maybe I'm not doing, college math anymore, or, taking poli-sci and, other, EdL 25. Is that still, yeah? EdL 25 is still one of the classes. Maybe I'm not taking like these classes anymore, but now I know what to do when I'm in high stress and I have a bunch of things to do and I have to go to work and I have to do my student teaching and I still have to go home and make dinner. Having a program that, forces you to like, hey, kind of manage your time better. And there are these great professors that will help you. They're like, hey, you seem really stressed out right now. Let's like talk about, what's going on and how can we make this better? So I think that was really beneficial in the long run. In the short term, it really didn't seem that way. But then also one thing I guess I would have learned more about is classroom management. I wish I would have learned a little bit more about that, because being a first year teacher and being very young, especially in high school, it was really hard to separate myself from, wanting to be their friend versus, needing to be their teacher and needing to be the adult and the role model, and knowing that there's so many different ways that people do that. Some teachers have a really strong voice and some teachers don't, and everyone just kind of has their own style. And I kind of wish I would have maybe learned a little bit more about that before going in.
Excellent feedback, Janelle. You know, you're making me think that we get you right at the cusp of your true and authentic adult life. So you're transitioning from being a student, obtaining your bachelor's, getting into the credential program, trying to juggle jobs. And for some students already are married with children or are caretaking parents or younger children, and trying to hold down a job, maybe even two, maybe even three, as we've seen, and trying to get some semblance of a life. That's when we get you. And so, yeah, absolutely. The classroom management component, I think, is a valuable feedback for us as we continue to think about how to connect that component of classroom management with the emotional skills that are necessary, the emotional intelligence components that are necessary for you to be effective once you get into the classroom. Thank you for that. How about you, Maida, your challenge and how you overcame it?
Some challenges, as you were talking about some of the state testing and TPAs, I think I blocked all that out of my memory, but as you were talking about it, I thought, oh yeah, that was really tough. Just because it is so demanding and you have to really write everything down. And so a lot of that, but the way that they break it down for you and that you do step by step, everything is really guided and very, like chunked down to where it doesn't feel so overwhelming, unless you're a procrastinator and you wait and then you just do everything last minute. But that doesn't usually work out very well with these kinds of things. But in regards to some of the prereqs, I remember that being a little bit challenging just because I didn't have a background in any like child development or any of those classes that were required. So I remember having to kind of shop around different schools to see where I could take these courses, where I could get, a not so expensive deal on them, because, I could take that class at a community college, or I could take it at UCI or Cal State Fullerton. Well, I'm going to take the community college because it's a little bit more affordable for me. So I think those are some things to also consider, especially with some of the prerequisites, because a lot of these, maybe one or two, depending on what you're going for, you can take at a community college. So consider those options as well. And what else? I remember the RICA was really challenging. So that's another state test. I don't know if that's still required these days, but there was a teacher, a professor, somebody who actually had a small group, and we just signed up and we would do like a crash course on things that would be on the RICA and how to pass it, and like kind of like a tutoring session. So that was really great because we were able to group in my cohort and just go to those for support. And in regards to like the student teaching, just being available to, like you said, your teacher who is your mentor, and then the away from that. And they're people that you stay in touch with because they teach you so much. And sometimes, like Mark said, they might teach you some things that you don't necessarily want to do or want to practice in your own classroom. But it is nice to have that filter and to have that ability to say, ooh, like that might just not work for my classroom, but thanks. So having that experience really helps just kind of narrow down like the kind of professor or teacher that you want to be.
Maida, you mentioned taking some of these courses, prereqs, especially at a community college. And yes, you absolutely have that option. I would recommend that before you have that option, ask the instructor for a copy of the syllabus before you officially register or start. And then you might want to send it to our department and say, does this class transfer credit towards the credential program? And then for instance, if you're taking the diversity course at a community college, the syllabus would come to me. I would review the content of the syllabus, the objectives, and then I would make a decision on whether that course actually will cover the units that are needed for that prereq. And so just make sure before you take an entire semester, and then you might get the professor that's in charge of the course at Cal State Fullerton say it doesn't meet our similar requirements. So even though they might have the same the same or say it is transferable. It's ultimately up to the instructor who teaches the course or is in charge of the course at the Cal State Fullerton level that will say whether the course enters it or not. So be very careful. Don't automatically assume it's a done deal. It transitions. It goes through a vetting process. Okay, Mark, I see that you added that your cohort also helped a lot. Did you want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, I definitely have to give credit to my cohort. We relied on each other so much. Mostly with not with the cohort for the program necessarily, but for my content area, which was English. I still to this day speak to those people, and we don't necessarily teach in the same district, but it's so cool to have someone who doesn't work at your district that you can 100% vent without that information, being afraid that that information will get back to, I don't know, anybody, right? Because we all have those days where we need to vent. And my cohort not only helped me during the program, but they still help me now. Like I mentioned before, the TPAs, we were like, what's happening? This is on you. And luckily we were all able to get together and just verify that we were all on the right track. What are you doing? What is going on? But my cohort helped a lot. And some of them came with me through my undergrad, and some of them I met in the actual cohort. But when you're in the credential program, create a community, because that's gonna help you along. Yeah, exactly. Lifelong friends. Yeah, we get together. Some of us from the cohort get together every so often for drinks and just talk about what's going on, and then talk about our career as well, in just like a very, very safe place.
And I would recommend as first and second year instructors, if you can have a similar style cohort on the campus where you actually teach, so that you can have people who you can count on. And of course, it does take time to know who you might connect with and who you can, who can be, responsible to keep things under wraps when it needs to, because they are the most challenging years of your career, but once you pass them, it's smooth sailing and you're able to enjoy.
I'm so sorry, Minerva. One other last announcement before we return back to the questions. Olga Luna Flores is here. She is from the Future Teachers of STEM, Olga, you might want to come on camera and say this better than me. Future Teachers of STEM who
Future STEM Teachers of Color project.
Thank you. So she was going to make a brief announcement and put a link in the chat. So if you are a STEM major, this is something you definitely want to look into.
But this is a program for STEM teachers of color who are interested in becoming a teacher. So it's like kind of like a cohort, just kind of like Mark said, but kind of before you go into the credential program, where we kind of like have conversations about problems, not problems, but have like we speak about certain issues that are going on right now with pretty much anything, open mind, having a growth mindset, diversity within STEM culture. And so we would love for people to join. We don't have that many, so we would love for more people to join us. It's a great opportunity for more people. It also gives you a stipend as well. And then we also create like a really safe space for future STEM teachers of color. And the application's right there. And I also put in a little bit above, the flyer as well, where the application can be found. Thank you for letting me do this. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Olga. We appreciate that. Okay, I'm going to turn it back over to Dr. Chavez. Thank you for letting me.
See how many people hang on with us. I had a mindset of 7. So are there any questions so I'll mix the two. So if Mark or Janelle, if you wanted to have a closing thought, or if other students wanted to ask their question, whether they wanted to come on camera and ask their question or throw it in the chat, we'll see, we'll monitor it. We'll see how many have questions. Or if you have a question, you could just do the reaction and raise your hand. So Mark and Janelle, I just invite you to unmute yourselves and feel free.
Yeah, some words of wisdom is first of all, you can do it. You're all planning to be teachers, so you can do it. Okay. It's not a race. You're only racing yourself pretty much, but it's not a race. Okay. Everyone's situation is different. And one of the most inspiring things to me when I was working at the Center for Careers in Teaching were older individuals who are pursuing their dreams of becoming an educator. So please don't be discouraged. You can do it. A word of wisdom when you get into the field of education, which you all will eventually, is to like Dr. Chavez said, find your community. It can be really difficult to find out, honestly, who you can trust and who's has your best interests at heart. So find your community, find those good people. They're out there. But once you do find them, just like Dr. Chavez said, things will run smoothly. It was difficult my first couple of years, finding out that not everyone does have your best interests at heart. So find those people who do and continue, give back. That's what I'll leave you with, give back. I never thought I was gonna go back to the same place that I was trying so desperately to get away from. And it's the best thing that I could have done because I'm looking at these kids and they were in the same position that I was once. And I wish I had someone like myself to be able to encourage them. So give back. And that's all I'll leave you with.
Janelle,
Yeah, I'll start off with Si se puede. Thanks, Mark. Yes, they can. Teachers are needed. Teachers of color are so needed. So please, 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 if you ever feel like you want to talk to somebody, reach out to me or, anyone else that's here. And along with giving back, I will say one of the things that has been really powerful with my experience in teaching is being a really good listener for not just the kids, but for their families too. A lot of the families, they speak in Spanish only and they don't have somebody to talk to, or they have questions, or they don't know when deadlines are approaching. So just connecting with those people, connecting with everybody, with the staff, find a good mentor at your school site when you get a job and, be like, hey, you're my person. Like, how do I do this? How do I do that? And you know what? They're going to love it. They're going to love having somebody that they can motivate and inspire, because we're all teachers. We all love to teach, and it doesn't stop with an age group. We love to help each other out. So yes, give back, be there for them, and always make sure to make time for yourself as well. Mental health is very important.
Heather, thank you for hosting and for being mindful of this. I know you had everything else on your plate this week, and I appreciate your support. Thank you. You're muted.
Of course I am. Thank you, Minerva. Thank you. You were great. Mark, Janelle, Mara, such awesome and inspirational panelists always. Thank you all so much. And thank you for the attendees for being here. So thank you all so much. Have a great night.